The water was at her chin when she heard the splintering crash above. Willow Prescott had stopped screaming hours ago. Her voice had given out somewhere between the third and fourth hour of captivity, when the water had only been at her knees, and she still believed someone might hear her cries echoing through the abandoned manor house. Now the cold liquid lapped at her jawline with each shallow breath she took, her bare feet slipping against the slimy stone floor as she struggled to keep her nose above the rising tide. The cellar door had been locked from the outside, the ancient wood swollen and immovable, and she had beaten her fists bloody against it until exhaustion forced her to conserve what little strength remained. She didn't know who had pushed her down here, didn't know why. The memory was fragmented, confused. She had been investigating the old Thornfield estate for her architecture blog, documenting the crumbling Victorian grandeur that stood like a ghost on the outskirts of the city. The house had been abandoned for decades, or so the local historical society claimed. She'd walked through rooms thick with dust, photographed peeling wallpaper and shattered chandeliers, felt the strange electricity in the air that old places sometimes carried. Then, hands, strong and cold, had shoved her from behind. The fall down the cellar stairs had knocked the wind from her lungs, and before she could recover, the door had slammed shut and the lock had turned with a terrible finality. That had been this morning. Now night had fallen, or at least she assumed it had. There were no windows in this stone prison, only the steady trickle of water from somewhere in the walls, relentless and patient as death itself. The single bulb overhead had flickered out an hour ago, plunging her into absolute darkness. She'd cried then, really cried, hot tears mixing with the cold water that would soon drown her. The crash came again, louder this time, accompanied by a sound like thunder rolling through the house above. Willow's heart lurched. She tried to call out but managed only a hoarse croak. The water kissed her lower lip. She tilted her head back as far as it would go, standing on her toes, feeling the weight of her soaked clothes trying to pull her under. Then the door exploded inward, not opened, not unlocked, exploded. The ancient wood simply disintegrated, torn from its hinges as though it were paper, and pale light flooded down the stone steps. Willow gasped, inhaling water, choking and coughing as she tried to see through the darkness and her own terror. A figure stood silhouetted at the top of the stairs, tall and impossibly still. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he descended, and Willow's oxygen-starved brain struggled to make sense of what she was seeing. He was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. White hair fell past his shoulders, luminous even in the dim light spilling from the hallway behind him. His skin was equally pale, like marble given life, and his features were sharp and aristocratic, all high cheekbones and a severe jaw. He wore black from head to toe, but the clothes were expensive, tailored, nothing like the casual wear of modern men, more like something from a period drama. His eyes found hers through the shadows, and even from several feet away she could see they were the color of arterial blood. "Hold on," he said, his voice low and commanding, accented with something old-world and unplaceable. He moved down the stairs with inhuman speed, and then he was wading through the water toward her. Willow tried to back away on instinct, but there was nowhere to go, and her exhausted legs finally gave out. She went under, the cold water closing over her head, and she felt rather than saw powerful arms wrap around her waist and haul her upward. Air, blessed air. She sucked it in desperately, coughing and gasping, only dimly aware that she was being carried out of the cellar, up the stairs, through the dark house. Her rescuer moved effortlessly despite her weight, as though she weighed nothing at all. She caught impressions of empty rooms flying past, felt the night air hit her face as he carried her outside, and then she was being laid on grass that felt impossibly soft after hours on cold stone. "Breathe," he instructed, and one cold hand touched her forehead with surprising gentleness. "Slowly. You're safe now." Willow did as he said, focusing on drawing air into her burning lungs. Her vision cleared gradually, and she found herself staring up at a night sky brilliant with stars. They were in the overgrown gardens behind the estate, she realized. Weeds and wildflowers had reclaimed what had once been formal beds, and the whole place smelled of earth and growing things. "Who?" she managed, then coughed again, water still trapped in her lungs. "Don't speak yet," her rescuer said. He was crouched beside her, those red eyes studying her with an intensity that should have been frightening. Should have been, but somehow wasn't. You nearly drowned. Your body needs time to recover. Who are you? She asked anyway, her voice a rasp. He tilted his head, regarding her with something that might have been amusement. You're stubborn. Good. You'll need that. He stood in one fluid motion, and from her position on the ground, he seemed impossibly tall, impossibly regal. My name is Perrin Obsidia, and you, Willow Prescott, have stumbled into something far more dangerous than a locked cellar. Her name on his lips startled her. How do you know who I am? I can smell your fear, he said simply. It led me to you. As for your name, I took the liberty of checking the identification in your bag while you were unconscious. I hope you'll forgive the intrusion. Willow pushed herself up on her elbows, though her arms shook with the effort. Her bag lay on the grass nearby, her phone visible through the open zipper. You smelled my fear? Perrin smiled, and the expression transformed his severe face into something both breathtaking and terrifying. When his lips pulled back, she caught a glimpse of elongated canines, sharp and white as bone. I'm a vampire, Miss Prescott. Your fear has a particular perfume, sweet and acrid all at once, like smoke and honey. It sang to me from miles away. She should have laughed, should have thought him insane, scrambled for her phone, called for help. Instead, she stared at those impossible fangs and thought of how he had torn through a locked door, how he had moved too fast for human eyes to track, how his skin seemed to glow in the moonlight like he was lit from within. That's not possible, she whispered. And yet here I am. He extended a hand toward her, palm up, an oddly courtly gesture. Can you stand? Willow hesitated, then placed her trembling hand in his. His skin was cool to the touch, but not unpleasantly so, and his grip was careful as he helped her to her feet. The world spun violently and she stumbled, but he caught her, one arm wrapping around her waist to steady her. Easy, he murmured, and she realized with a start that his mouth was very close to her ear. You've been through an ordeal. Someone locked me in there, she said, the words tumbling out now that the immediate danger had passed. Someone pushed me down the stairs and locked the door. I don't know who. I didn't see their face. I know. Perrin's voice had gone cold, and when Willow looked up at him, his expression was carved from ice. I can smell them too. Vampire. Young and foolish, probably acting without sanction. This is Thornfield Estate, which means it falls under my jurisdiction. Someone has committed a grave offense here tonight. Your jurisdiction, Willow repeated numbly. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her lightheaded and confused. What does that mean? It means, Perrin said, guiding her carefully toward the front of the house, where she could now see a sleek black car parked on the weed-choked driveway, that I am the vampire king of this territory. This city and everything in it answers to me, including whatever fool thought they could murder a human on my lands without consequence. Murder. The word hit her like a physical blow. Someone had tried to kill her, had locked her in that cellar and let the water rise, had meant for her to drown in the darkness. Her legs went weak again, and Perrin tightened his hold, practically carrying her the last few feet to the car. You need rest, he said, opening the passenger door and guiding her inside with unexpected care. Warmth, dry clothes, and then you need to tell me everything you remember about tonight, because whoever did this to you made a very serious mistake. I should go to the police, Willow heard herself say, though the words sounded distant even to her own ears. I should report this. Perrin closed the door and moved around to the driver's side with that unnatural speed. When he slid behind the wheel, he turned to look at her, and in the dim interior lights his eyes seemed to glow. The police cannot help you, Miss Prescott. This is a matter of vampire law now. Whoever tried to kill you is immortal, dangerous, and clearly has no regard for the treaties that keep our kind hidden from yours. Your human authorities are not equipped to handle such a threat. But no arguments. His tone brooked no disagreement, and despite her fear and confusion, Willow found herself falling silent. I will keep you safe. That is my responsibility as king, and my vow to you now. But I cannot do that if you run to those who cannot protect you. Do you understand? She didn't. Not really. None of this made sense. Vampires weren't real. Kings who ruled from the shadows weren't real. And yet she was sitting in a luxury car beside a man who had torn a door from its hinges with his bare hands, who had eyes like rubies and fangs like a wolf, who moved faster than thought and spoke with the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "I understand," she whispered, because what else could she say? Perrin studied her for a long moment, then nodded once and started the engine. The car purred to life, and he pulled away from Thornfield Estate with smooth precision, leaving the place of her near death behind them. Willow watched it recede through the side mirror, the crumbling Victorian hulk growing smaller until the trees swallowed it completely. "Where are we going?" she asked quietly. "My home," Perrin replied. "It's secure, warded against intrusion. You'll be safe there while I hunt down the one responsible for this attack." "You're going to hunt them." "I'm going to find them," he corrected. "And then I'm going to make it very clear what happens to those who break our laws. The covenant between worlds exists for a reason, Miss Prescott. Humans and vampires have coexisted in secret for centuries because we have rules. We do not hunt indiscriminately. We do not kill without cause. And we certainly do not attempt to murder innocents and leave them to drown in abandoned buildings. Such actions threaten exposure for all of us, and I cannot allow that." His hands were steady on the wheel, his profile sharp and perfect in the passing streetlights. They had entered the city proper now, the urban landscape rising around them in towers of glass and steel. Willow had lived here for 3 years, ever since moving for graduate school, and she thought she knew its streets well. But Perrin navigated turns she had never noticed, took roads that seemed to appear from nowhere, and within minutes they were descending into an underground parking structure that looked like it belonged to a 5-star hotel. "This is where you live?" she asked as he parked in a reserved spot near a private elevator. "One of my residences," Perrin said. "I maintain several throughout the territory." He got out and came around to open her door, offering his hand again. "Come, you're shivering." She was. Now that the shock was wearing off, she could feel the cold seeping into her bones, her wet clothes clinging uncomfortably to her skin. She accepted his help and let him guide her to the elevator, where he pressed his palm against a biometric scanner. The doors slid open immediately, revealing an interior of polished brass and mirrors. As they ascended, Willow caught sight of her reflection and barely recognized herself. Her dark hair hung in wet tangles around her face, and her skin was pale with cold and fear. There was a bruise forming on her cheekbone from where she'd hit the cellar stairs, and her clothes were ruined, covered in algae and dirt from the water. She looked like a drowned ghost. Beside her, Perrin was pristine and perfect, not a hair out of place despite having waded through filthy water to save her. When he noticed her looking, he met her eyes in the mirror. "You're alive," he said quietly. "Everything else can be fixed." The elevator opened onto a penthouse that stole what little breath Willow had left. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city lights, and the interior was a study in elegant Gothic luxury. Dark wood and deep jewel tones dominated, with antique furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum, arranged with careful precision. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with leather-bound volumes, and she spotted what looked like genuine oil paintings hung in gilded frames. "This way," Perrin said, gesturing toward a hallway. "The guest suite is prepared. You'll find clothing that should fit, and the bathroom is fully stocked. Take as long as you need to clean up and warm yourself. We can talk after." Willow wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers immediately, but another violent shiver ran through her and she nodded mutely. Perrin led her down the hall to a bedroom that was larger than her entire apartment, decorated in shades of cream and gold. The attached bathroom was equally luxurious, all marble and soft lighting. "I'll be in the library," Perrin said from the doorway. "Take your time. You're safe here, Miss Prescott. I give you my word." Then he was gone, moving with that silent grace that seemed inherent to his nature, and Willow was alone for the first time since he'd pulled her from the water. She locked the bathroom door on instinct, then immediately felt foolish. If he wanted to hurt her, he'd had ample opportunity. Instead, he'd saved her life and brought her somewhere warm and safe. A vampire had saved her life. The thought seemed to unlock something in her mind. And suddenly, she was shaking for real, her whole body trembling as the terror she'd been suppressing came flooding back. She had nearly died, had felt the water rising inch by inch, had known with absolute certainty that she was going to drown in the dark, alone and forgotten. and someone had done that to her deliberately, had locked her in there and walked away, had left her to die in the most horrible way she could imagine. Willow slid down the bathroom wall and wrapped her arms around her knees, letting the tears come at last. She cried for the fear, for the cold, for the hours of desperate hope that had slowly transformed into resignation. She cried until her throat ached and her eyes burned, and then she forced herself to stand because sitting here sobbing wouldn't change what had happened. The shower was almost painfully hot, but she welcomed it, standing under the spray until feeling returned to her numb extremities. She scrubbed away the filth from the cellar water, watched it swirl down the drain in gray streams, and tried not to think about how close she'd come to death. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that was softer than anything she'd ever owned, she found clothes laid out on the bed that definitely hadn't been there before. She dressed quickly in the leggings and oversized sweater, both of which fit surprisingly well. There were even socks, thick and warm, and she pulled them on gratefully. Her own clothes were gone, she noticed. Perrin must have taken them while she was in the shower, moving so quietly she hadn't heard a thing. The thought should have disturbed her, but instead, she found it oddly comforting. He was taking care of her, this strange vampire king who had appeared from nowhere to save her life. Willow found him in the library, as promised. He stood before the massive windows with his hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the city below. He had changed clothes, she noticed, the black outfit replaced by dark trousers and a deep burgundy shirt that somehow made his pale skin and white hair even more striking. He turned as she entered, and she saw that he held a crystal glass filled with something red and viscous. Blood. She knew it without being told, and her stomach turned. "I apologize," Perrin said, noting her expression. "I should have fed before coming to find you, but your fear was so strong I couldn't ignore it. This won't take long." He raised the glass in a slight salute and drained it in one smooth motion, then set it aside on a nearby table. "Better. Forgive my rudeness." "You feed," Willow said carefully. "All vampires do. It's how we survive." He gestured to one of the leather armchairs positioned near a fireplace that crackled with warm flames. "Please, sit. You must have questions." That was an understatement. Willow moved to the offered chair and sank into it, grateful for the fire's warmth. Perrin took the chair opposite, settling with a grace that made her think of predators at rest, dangerous but momentarily calm. "I don't understand any of this," she admitted. "Vampires, kings, territories. It sounds like something from a fantasy novel." "I imagine it does," Perrin agreed. "Your world and mine exist side by side, Miss Prescott, but we work very hard to keep them separate. Most humans live their entire lives without ever encountering our kind, and that's by design." The covenant between worlds was signed 300 years ago, after a particularly bloody period when too many humans discovered our existence and war seemed inevitable. It established rules for both sides. We do not hunt openly. We do not turn humans without extreme cause. We maintain secrecy. In exchange, certain human authorities know of us and help maintain that secrecy in return for our assistance with matters they cannot handle through conventional means. Like what? Other supernatural threats. There are things far worse than vampires in the dark, Miss Prescott. We serve as a first line of defense against them. And in return, we're left to govern ourselves as we see fit. Willow processed this slowly. "And you're the king of this territory. Of this city and the surrounding regions, yes. I've held this territory for nearly 2 centuries. It's my responsibility to maintain order among the vampire population here, to enforce our laws, and to ensure that the covenant is upheld. What happened to you tonight was a direct violation of every principle we hold sacred." "Who did it?" The question came out harder than she intended. "Who locked me in that cellar?" Perrin's expression darkened. "I don't know yet, but I will find them. I've already sent word to my court. Every vampire in the city is being questioned as we speak. Someone will know something, and when they do, they'll bring me that information or face severe consequences." "Your court," Willow repeated. "There are more of you. Hundreds in this city alone. Thousands across the world. We're not as numerous as humans, but we're far from rare." He leaned forward, his red eyes intense. "Tell me exactly what happened tonight. Every detail you can remember. It might help me narrow down the suspect." So Willow told him about her blog, about her fascination with old architecture, about how she'd found the Thornfield estate through historical records and decided to document it before it was demolished, about walking through the empty rooms with her camera, feeling increasingly uneasy, like she was being watched, and then the hands on her back, the fall, the door slamming shut. "I never saw who did it," she finished. "It happened so fast. One second I was photographing a chandelier, the next I was at the bottom of the stairs and the door was locked." Perrin was quiet for a long moment, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. "Thornfield Estate has been abandoned for decades," he said finally. "But it wasn't always so. It was once the home of a vampire family, the Thornfields, who were prominent in this territory. They fell from grace 50 years ago after breaking several laws, and the estate was seized and left to decay as a warning to others. But the building itself is still considered sacred ground, part of our heritage. No vampire should have been there without permission, and certainly none should have harmed a human within its walls." "Maybe they didn't know I was human," Willow suggested, though even as she said it, she knew it was weak. "They knew." Perrin's voice was flat, certain. "Your heartbeat alone would have told them. No, this was deliberate. Someone wanted you dead, or wanted to send a message, or both. The question is why." "I'm nobody," Willow protested. "I'm just a graduate student with a blog. I don't have enemies. I don't know any vampires, or I didn't until tonight. There's no reason anyone would want to kill me." "Perhaps not. Or perhaps you stumbled onto something you weren't meant to see." Perrin stood abruptly and began pacing, his movements controlled but tense. "The timing troubles me. That you would choose tonight, of all nights, to visit that particular estate. That someone would be there waiting, ready to dispose of a human trespasser so violently. It feels coordinated." "You think someone knew I was coming?" "I think someone may have lured you there." He stopped pacing and turned to face her. "Your blog, does it have a large following? Do you take requests for locations to document?" Willow's heart sank as understanding dawned. "Yes, I have about 10,000 followers, and last week someone commented suggesting I look into the Thornfield estate, said it was being torn down next month and it would be my last chance to photograph it. I looked into it and found out the demolition was real, so I went today." "Who made the suggestion?" "I don't know. It was an anonymous account. I get those sometimes." She pulled out her phone, which had somehow survived the ordeal, and opened her blog with shaking hands. The comment was still there, posted by an account with no profile picture and no other activity. "Here." Perrin took the phone and studied it, his expression growing darker by the second. "This is no coincidence. Someone used your own passion against you, lured you to a location they knew would be isolated, and attempted to dispose of you. The question remains, why you specifically?" "Maybe it was random," Willow said desperately. "Maybe they just wanted to kill a human, and I was convenient." "No." Perrin's tone left no room for argument. "Random killings happen in alleys and dark streets, quick and brutal. This took planning. Patience. Whoever did this wanted you in that specific location, and they wanted your death to look like an accident, a tragic drowning in an abandoned building. Even if your body was found, no one would suspect murder." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and horrible. Willow felt her hands start to shake again and clasped them together in her lap. "What do I do?" "You stay here," Perrin said immediately, "under my protection. Whoever did this will likely try again once they realize you survived, and I cannot allow that. You are under my authority now, Miss Prescott, whether you agree or not. Your life is my responsibility." "You can't just keep me prisoner," Willow protested, though the words lacked heat. In truth, she had nowhere else to go, no one else who could protect her from an immortal killer. "I can and I will, if that's what it takes to keep you alive." Perrin moved closer, crouching before her chair so they were eye to eye. This close, she could see flecks of darker red in his crimson irises, could smell something spicy and foreign on his skin. "I understand this is frightening. I understand you want to return to your normal life, but that life is forfeit for now. Someone wants you dead, and until I discover who and why, you cannot be safe anywhere but here." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." His hand covered both of hers, cool and steady. "I swear to you, I will find the one responsible. I will make them answer for what they did, and I will ensure you can return to your life safely when this is over. But I need you to trust me, Willow. Can you do that?" It was the first time he'd used her given name, and hearing it in his old-world accent did strange things to her pulse. She looked into his eyes, those impossible red eyes, and saw nothing but fierce determination and something that might have been concern. He had saved her life, had torn through a locked door without hesitation, had carried her to safety, had offered his home and his protection without asking for anything in return. "I'll trust you," she whispered. Perrin's expression softened fractionally. "Thank you. I know this is difficult." He stood, releasing her hands, and she felt oddly bereft at the loss of contact. "It's late. You should rest. Tomorrow I'll begin the investigation in earnest, and I may need you to answer more questions. For now, sleep. You're safe here, I promise." Willow let him guide her back to the guest room, exhaustion suddenly crashing over her like a wave. The bed was enormous and inviting, and she crawled under the covers fully dressed, too tired to care about propriety. Perrin lingered in the doorway, a pale figure in the dim light. "If you need anything, call for me," he said quietly. "I'll hear you." "Will you sleep?" she asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. "No, my kind doesn't require sleep the way yours does. I'll be working through the night, contacting my people, gathering information, but I'll be here if you need me." Then he was gone, the door clicking softly shut behind him. Willow stared at the ceiling, her mind spinning with everything that had happened. 24 hours ago, her biggest concern had been finishing her thesis. Now she was hiding in a vampire king's penthouse, hunted by an unknown killer for reasons she couldn't begin to fathom. She should have been terrified, should have been planning escape, calling the police, doing something rational. Instead, she felt oddly safe, cocooned in expensive sheets in a stranger's home. Because he wasn't really a stranger anymore, was he? Perrin Obsidia had saved her life, had vowed to protect her, and she believed him with an intensity that defied logic. Sleep claimed her before she could think too hard about what that meant. She woke to sunlight streaming through windows she didn't remember being there. For a confused moment, Willow thought the previous night had been a nightmare, that she was safe in her own bed. Then she saw the unfamiliar room, felt the incredible softness of sheets that definitely weren't hers, and memory came flooding back. The cellar, the water. Perrin tearing through the door like an avenging angel. Willow sat up slowly, relieved to find her body felt mostly normal despite the ordeal. Sore in places, tender in others, but whole. Alive. She padded to the window and looked out at a cityscape she recognized but had never seen from this angle. They were high up, easily 20 stories or more, and the morning light turned the glass towers golden. There was a soft knock at the door. "Miss Prescott, are you awake?" Not Perrin's voice. This one was female, accented differently, lighter. Willow grabbed a robe she found hanging nearby and opened the door to find a woman who could only be a vampire standing in the hallway. She had the same luminous white skin and hair, though hers was styled in a sleek bob, and her eyes were a lighter shade of red, almost pink. She wore a modern pantsuit in charcoal gray and smiled warmly. "I'm Seraphine," she said. "I'm one of the king's advisors. He asked me to check on you and provide anything you might need. I hope you slept well." Yes, thank you." Willow stepped back to let her in, feeling underdressed and awkward. Seraphine moved with the same predatory grace as Perrin, crossing to open the curtains wider. "His Majesty has been working through the night investigating your attack. He wanted me to assure you that progress is being made, though he'll give you the details himself when he returns." "Returns? Where did he go?" "To speak with some of our older residents, those who might remember the Thornfield family and their connections. He's being very thorough." Seraphine turned to face her, expression serious. "What happened to you last night was unconscionable, Miss Prescott. Please know that the entire court is appalled. We will find who did this." "Thank you," Willow said, unsure what else to say. This is all very strange for me." "I imagine so. Learning of our existence is always a shock, especially under such circumstances." Seraphine gestured toward the bedroom. "I've taken the liberty of having some clothes brought up for you. Things more suitable than borrowed loungewear. I hope you don't mind. His Majesty mentioned you were similar in size to his sister." "He has a sister?" "Had." She was killed in the wars long ago, but her things remain, and I think she'd be pleased to know they're being put to use." Seraphine's expression turned sad for a moment, then cleared. "Come, let me show you what we've selected." The next hour passed in a strange blur of normalcy within the surreal. Seraphine helped her choose clothes from a collection that looked like it came from a high-end boutique, all quality fabrics and timeless styles. She answered Willow's tentative questions about vampire culture with patience and grace, explaining the court hierarchy, the territories, the careful balance that kept their world hidden from human eyes. "How many humans know?" Willow asked as she pulled on a pair of dark jeans that fit perfectly. "About us specifically? Very few. Perhaps a few hundred worldwide, usually those in positions of power who need to know. About the supernatural in general? More than you'd think. Your myths and legends exist for a reason, Miss Prescott. Humans have always sensed we're here, even when they couldn't see us clearly. And you've really been hidden for 300 years? Since the Covenant, yes. Before that, things were messier. There were hunts, wars. Both sides suffered greatly. The treaty brought peace, structure. Most of us would die before violating it, which is why what happened to you is so shocking. Whoever locked you in that cellar risked exposing us all." Willow pulled on a soft gray sweater and turned to face Seraphine. "Perrin said someone might have lured me there deliberately, that it wasn't random. His Majesty is rarely wrong about such things. He's been king for a very long time. Miss Prescott, he's seen every kind of scheme and betrayal imaginable. If he suspects coordination, you should take that seriously." "But why me? I'm nobody important." "Perhaps, or perhaps you're more important than you realize." Seraphine's pink eyes were knowing. "Sometimes we're players in stories we don't understand yet. The trick is surviving long enough to see how it all unfolds." They made their way to the kitchen, where Seraphine prepared breakfast with surprising domesticity. Eggs and toast and fresh fruit, all served on china that looked antique and probably cost more than Willow's car. She ate ravenously, realizing she hadn't had food since yesterday morning, while Seraphine sipped something red from a wine glass and maintained a comfortable silence. "Does it bother you?" Willow asked eventually. "The blood drinking?" "Does breathing bother you?" Seraphine countered gently. "It's simply what we are. We need blood to survive, to maintain our strength and abilities. Most of us feed from willing donors now, humans who consent in exchange for payment or other benefits. Some keep thralls, though that's fallen out of fashion. A few still hunt, but only criminals and those who won't be missed. The laws are strict about it." "Perrin fed last night. I saw. He had to. Using his power to find you, to tear through that door, it requires energy. He would have been weakened without sustenance." Seraphine set down her glass. "He saved your life, Miss Prescott. Many vampires would have ignored your fear, or worse, taken advantage of it. That he came for you immediately, that he's extending his protection. These things are not small gestures. The king doesn't involve himself in individual cases often. You should feel honored." "I feel confused," Willow admitted, "and scared, and grateful, all at once. That's reasonable." Seraphine reached across the table and squeezed her hand briefly, the touch cool but comforting. "You've been through a trauma. Allow yourself to feel what you feel. His Majesty will keep you safe while you process it all." They were finishing breakfast when Willow heard the elevator chime. Moments later, Perrin strode into the kitchen, and despite having seen him the night before, his presence still stole her breath. In daylight, or rather the artificial light of the penthouse, since she realized now that all the windows had special tinting to protect the vampires from sun, he was even more striking. The white hair, the red eyes, the sharp aristocratic features. He looked like something from a painting, too beautiful to be real. "Seraphine," he greeted with a nod, then his attention fixed on Willow. "Miss Prescott, how are you feeling?" "Better," she said honestly. "Sore, but better. Did you find anything?" His expression darkened. "Yes, though I wish I hadn't." He moved to pour himself a glass of blood from a crystal decanter on the counter, and Willow tried not to watch too closely as he drank. "I need to show you something. Can you come with me to the library?" Willow exchanged a glance with Seraphine, who nodded encouragingly, then followed Perrin out of the kitchen. He moved through the penthouse with obvious familiarity, his long strides forcing her to hurry to keep up. In the library, he gestured to the chair she'd occupied last night, then began pacing before the windows. I spoke with several elder vampires this morning, he began without preamble, ones who were here when the Thornfield family fell from power. What I learned was troubling. Troubling how? The Thornfields were executed for attempting to overthrow my rule. They believed vampires should come out of hiding, take open control of human society. It was a foolish plan, doomed to fail, but they gained some support before I put an end to it. The entire family was destroyed 50 years ago. Or so I thought. Willow felt her stomach drop. You think one of them survived? I know one did. Perrin stopped pacing and turned to face her fully. Marcus Thornfield, the youngest son. He was only 30 years old at the time of the family's execution, barely more than a fledgling. I was told he died with the others, but it seems that was a lie. One of my advisors from that time confessed this morning that he helped Marcus escape in exchange for a promise that the boy would leave the territory forever. He believed he was showing mercy to a youth who'd had no real part in his family's schemes. And did he? Leave, I mean. He did. For 50 years he's been gone, and I had no idea he still lived. But 3 months ago he returned. Quietly, secretly. I only discovered this because I had my people check every vampire who entered the territory in the last year. Marcus came back under a false name, and he's been living in the shadows ever since. You think he locked me in the cellar? I'm certain of it. Perrin's hands clenched into fists at his sides. I had my people search his residence this morning. We found your blog bookmarked on his computer, Miss Prescott. Multiple posts going back months. He's been following you, studying you, learning your patterns. The room spun. Willow gripped the arms of the chair to steady herself. Why? What did I do to him? Nothing. You're not the target, not really. Perrin crossed to her, dropping to one knee so they were eye level, his expression intense. I am. This is about revenge, about making me suffer for destroying his family. And the way to hurt a king is to kill innocents under his protection, to show that he's weak, that he can't keep his people safe. But I'm not your people. I'm just human. You became my responsibility the moment you were attacked in my territory. His voice was fierce, brooking no argument. And Marcus knew that. He chose you specifically because you're unconnected, innocent. Your death would have been a statement, a declaration, that he could strike at me whenever he wanted. So this is all because of some 50-year-old grudge? Willow couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. He tried to kill me to make a point? Yes, and he'll try again. Perrin stood, his movements sharp with barely contained rage. I've issued a blood warrant for his capture. Every vampire in the city is now hunting him. He can't hide for long, not when the entire court wants his head, but until he's found, you're in danger. How long will that take? Days, maybe weeks. Marcus is clever and he's had 50 years to plan this, but he'll make a mistake eventually, and when he does, we'll have him. Weeks. Willow tried to process that, tried to imagine spending weeks hiding in this penthouse while an immortal killer stalked the city looking for her. I have a life, she said weakly. I have classes, a thesis, responsibilities. All of which mean nothing if you're dead. Perrin's tone softened slightly. I'm sorry, Willow. I truly am. You've been dragged into something that has nothing to do with you, and I take full responsibility for that. This is my fault. My failure to ensure Marcus was truly dead, my advisor's foolish mercy, my inability to detect his return. All of it falls on me. But I swear to you, I will fix this. I will find him, and I will end this threat permanently. The use of her first name again sent that same flutter through her chest. Willow looked up at him, at this ancient vampire king who spoke of decades and territories and blood warrants like they were normal things, and felt something shift inside her. He wasn't just protecting her out of duty. She could see genuine remorse in his eyes, real anger on her behalf. It's not your fault, she heard herself say. You saved my life. You're keeping me safe. That's more than anyone else could do. It's not enough. It will never be enough until Marcus is dead and you're free to live without fear. Perrin ran a hand through his white hair, a gesture of frustration that made him seem suddenly more human. I've lived for 2 centuries, Willow. I've fought in wars, survived plagues, built this territory from nothing, and yet I couldn't prevent a fledgling from nearly drowning an innocent woman in a cellar. The shame of that will haunt me." "Stop," Willow said firmly, surprising herself. She stood facing him squarely. "Stop blaming yourself. You didn't know he was back. You didn't lock me in that cellar, and you came for me when it mattered most. That's what counts." They stood close enough that she could feel the coolness radiating from his skin, could see the subtle rise and fall of his chest, even though she knew vampires didn't need to breathe the way humans did. His red eyes searched hers, and for a moment the intensity of his gaze was almost too much to bear. "You're remarkable," he said softly. "Most humans would be hysterical by now, or demanding to be released, or cursing me for dragging them into this nightmare. Yet here you stand, offering me comfort when you're the one who suffered." "I'm terrified," Willow admitted, "but terror doesn't solve anything, and you're right that I can't go back to my normal life right now, so I might as well make the best of this situation." Something that might have been admiration flickered across Perrin's face. The best of being trapped in a penthouse with a vampire? "I could think of worse fates." The words came out more flirtatious than she'd intended, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I mean, you have a nice library, and Seraphine is good company, and nobody's trying to drown me currently, so that's an improvement over yesterday." Perrin's lips quirked in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "Your optimism is refreshing." "Very well, if you're determined to make the best of this, then I'll do everything in my power to make your stay comfortable. You have the run of the penthouse. Anything you need, ask for it. Consider this your home for as long as necessary." "Thank you," Willow said, and meant it. The days that followed fell into a strange rhythm. Willow spent her mornings with Seraphine, who proved to be an endless source of information about vampire culture and history. She learned about the different courts scattered across the world, each ruled by a king or queen of varying power and temperament. She learned about the feeding laws, the strict prohibitions against turning humans without approval, the complex web of alliances and rivalries that had existed for centuries. Perrin came and went at odd hours, sometimes disappearing for the entire night to hunt for Marcus, sometimes appearing unexpectedly to check on her. They fell into conversation easily, and Willow found herself drawn to his company more than she should have been. He was intelligent and well-read, having lived through centuries of human history, and he spoke about the past with the casual authority of someone who'd been there. But he also listened when she talked about her own life, her studies, her dreams for the future, and he never made her feel small or insignificant despite the vast gulf between their experiences. On the fourth night of her stay, Willow found him in the library long after Seraphine had retired to her own quarters elsewhere in the building. He stood before the windows as he often did, a glass of blood forgotten on the table beside him, staring out at the city lights. "Can't sleep?" she asked quietly. Perrin turned, surprise flickering across his features. "I don't sleep, remember?" "I know, but you look tired." She moved closer, studying the tension in his shoulders, the tight line of his jaw. "No luck finding Marcus." "He's gone to ground. Every lead turns cold. Every sighting proves false. It's as if he's vanished from the city entirely." Perrin's frustration was evident in every word. "I have hundreds of vampires searching for him, and yet he eludes us. He's better at this than I gave him credit for." "You'll find him," Willow said with confidence she wasn't sure she felt. "Will I? Or will he wait until we let our guard down, until you have to resume your life and then strike when you're vulnerable?" Perrin turned away from the window, his red eyes fierce. "This is my nightmare, Willow. That I'll fail to protect you, that he'll succeed where he failed before, that I'll have to live with the knowledge that an innocent died because of my vendetta with his family." The rawness in his voice caught her off guard. In the days since her rescue, Perrin had been controlled, commanding, every inch the king. But now she saw past that facade to the genuine fear beneath, and it moved something deep in her chest. "You won't fail," she said firmly, closing the distance between them until she stood directly before him. "I'm still here, still alive, because of you. For now. That's all any of us have. Now. This moment." She reached out hesitantly, then let her hand rest on his arm. Through the fabric of his shirt she could feel the coolness of his skin, the coiled strength beneath. You can't protect me from everything, Perrin. None of us are immortal. I am. You know what I mean. She squeezed gently. Bad things happen. People get hurt. But you're doing everything you can, and I trust you. That has to count for something. Perrin stared down at her hand on his arm, and when he looked up, his expression had shifted into something she couldn't quite read. You shouldn't trust me so easily. I'm a vampire, Willow, a killer. I've taken more lives than you can imagine in my 200 years. In wars, in self-defense, to protect others. Seraphine told me about your history. You're not some mindless monster. No, but I'm not human either. I'm other. Dangerous, you should fear me. I don't. The words came out barely above a whisper. I should, but I don't. They stood frozen like that, her hand on his arm, his eyes locked on hers. The air between them felt charged, electric, like the moment before lightning struck. Willow's heart hammered in her chest, and she knew he could hear it, could probably smell the shift in her biochemistry as something hot and unfamiliar coiled in her stomach. You're playing with fire, Perrin said quietly, but he didn't pull away. Maybe I like the heat. He moved so fast she didn't see it coming. One moment they stood apart, the next his hand cupped her face with surprising gentleness, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. If this is what you want, tell me now, because once we cross this line, I won't be able to pretend I'm merely your protector. What will you be? Yours. If you'll have me. His voice had dropped to a rough whisper. I know this is madness. I know you're under my protection, that this is the worst possible time, that I have no right to want you the way I do, but I cannot seem to help myself. You've burrowed under my skin, Willow Prescott, and I find I don't want you to leave. Her breath caught. I don't want to leave either. That was all the permission he needed. Perrin kissed her with a controlled passion that made her knees weak, his lips cool against hers, but no less electrifying for it. One arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against him, while his other hand tangled in her dark hair. Willow clung to him, overwhelmed by sensation, by the feel of his solid body against hers, by the way he kissed her like she was precious and desired all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard well, she was breathing hard. He merely looked composed. Willow felt like the world had tilted on its axis. That was a terrible idea, Perrin finished, though his arms remained around her, but one I can't bring myself to regret. Good, because I'm not sorry either. She rested her forehead against his chest, feeling the absence of a heartbeat beneath her cheek. It should have been disturbing, but somehow wasn't. What does this mean? I don't know, he admitted. It's been decades since I allowed myself to feel anything like this, centuries perhaps. Emotions are dangerous for my kind. They make us vulnerable, unpredictable. I've always prided myself on control. And now? Now I find that control vastly overrated when you're standing in my arms. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head, gentle and sweet. We'll figure this out, Willow. Together. After Marcus is dealt with and you're safe, we'll talk about what this is and what it could become. But for now, know that you are infinitely precious to me, and I will move heaven and earth to keep you from harm. That's very dramatic, she said, but she was smiling against his shirt. I'm 200 years old. I'm allowed to be dramatic. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, while the city lights glittered beyond the windows. Willow knew this was insane, knew that falling for a vampire king was the definition of a bad idea, but she couldn't bring herself to care. For the first time since being locked in that cellar, she felt truly safe. Not just physically protected, but emotionally anchored. Perrin was solid and real, and he wanted her, and that was enough for now. Eventually, they moved to the couch, settling close together while Perrin told her stories from his long life. About the wars he'd fought, the places he'd seen, the slow march of human progress he'd witnessed from the shadows. Willow listened, fascinated, asking questions and laughing at his dry observations about historical events she'd only read about in books. You should have been a teacher, she said at one point. You make history come alive. I was for a while. Back in the 1800s, I posed as a university professor in Edinburgh. It lasted nearly 20 years before people began to notice I wasn't aging. I had to disappear, fake my death, start over somewhere new. That's the curse of immortality, Willow. Everyone you know ages and dies while you remain unchanged. It's why most of us learn not to form attachments to humans. Is that what I am? An attachment? He looked at her seriously. You're far more than that. And yes, I'm aware of the complications, of the impossibility of any real future between us. But for now, in this moment, I choose not to care about the obstacles. What if I didn't have to age? The question slipped out before Willow could stop it. What if there was a way for us to have time? Perrin's expression shuddered immediately. You're speaking of being turned, made into a vampire. Is it possible? Yes, but it's forbidden without approval from the entire council, and that approval is rarely given. The laws exist for good reason. Turning someone is intimate, dangerous, and permanent. Most humans who attempt the change don't survive it. Their bodies reject the vampire blood, and they die in agony. Those who do survive are often driven mad, unable to cope with the bloodlust and enhanced senses. It takes decades to truly master being a vampire, and many fledglings don't make it through those early years. But some do, Willow pressed. Some do, he agreed reluctantly. I've turned 3 people in my 200 years, and only 2 survived the change. It's not something I do lightly, Willow. The responsibility of creating a new vampire, of guiding them through their transformation, it's immense, and the council would want extensive justification, proof that the candidate is worthy and willing, that they understand the magnitude of what they're giving up. My humanity, your mortality, your ability to walk in daylight without protection, your chance at a normal life, at children, at growing old surrounded by grandchildren. These are not small losses. Perrin took her hand, his touch gentle. I won't lie to you. The thought of making you immortal, of having you by my side for centuries instead of decades, it's tempting beyond measure. But I care for you too much to pressure you into such a decision. This is something you would have to want independently, fully informed of all the costs. Willow considered his words carefully. A week ago, she'd been a graduate student with a normal, boring life. Now she was discussing immortality with a vampire king while hiding from someone who wanted her dead. The surreality of it would have been funny if it weren't so serious. I'm not saying I want it now, she said finally, but I'm not dismissing the possibility either. If we're going to explore whatever this is between us, I need to know all the options, including the impossible ones. Fair enough. Perrin lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a cool kiss to her knuckles. We have time to consider it. First, we deal with Marcus. Ensure your safety. Let you return to your life and see if these feelings persist once you're not dependent on me for protection. Then we can discuss the future, if there is one to discuss. There will be, Willow said with confidence. I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I feel it here. She pressed her free hand over her heart. This isn't just trauma bonding or hero worship. This is real. I believe you, Perrin said softly, because I feel it too. And I've lived long enough to know the difference between infatuation and something more meaningful. You are remarkable, Willow Prescott. Brave and stubborn and endlessly surprising. I am honored by your affection. They talked until dawn began to lighten the sky beyond the tinted windows, until Willow's eyes grew heavy and Perrin insisted she get some rest. He carried her to the guest room despite her protests that she could walk, laid her gently in the bed, and pressed a kiss to her forehead. Sleep well, he murmured. I'll be here when you wake. Promise. Always. Willow fell asleep with those words echoing in her mind, and for the first time since the cellar, her dreams were peaceful. The breakthrough came on the 8th day. Willow was in the library with a stack of books on architecture. Perrin had an incredible collection and had encouraged her to continue her research despite the circumstances when Seraphine burst in with uncharacteristic urgency. We found him, she announced. Marcus. One of the patrols spotted him entering an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district. His Majesty has already gone to confront him. Willow stood so fast her chair toppled backward. When? 10 minutes ago. He left specific instructions that you were to stay here under guard. Seraphine moved to block the doorway, her pleasant expression replaced by something harder. I'm sorry, Miss Prescott, but I have my orders. He could get hurt. He's the Vampire King. Marcus is a fledgling who's been running scared for over a week. His Majesty will be fine." "You don't know that." Willow's heart raced with sudden fear. What if it's a trap? What if Marcus isn't alone? "Then His Majesty has 24 of our best warriors with him." Seraphine's voice was calm but firm. "He knows what he's doing. You need to trust him." Willow wanted to argue, wanted to demand they take her to the warehouse, wanted to do something other than stand helplessly in this luxurious prison. But Seraphine was right. She would only be a liability in a fight between vampires, a weakness Marcus could exploit to hurt Perrin. So she forced herself to sit back down, to pick up her book, to pretend she could focus on anything other than the man who had become so important to her, facing danger on her behalf. The hour that followed was the longest of her life. Seraphine stayed with her, offering quiet reassurance, but nothing could calm the terror coiling in Willow's stomach. What if something went wrong? What if Marcus killed Perrin? What if she never saw him again, never got to tell him that she'd made her decision, that she wanted the future they'd talked about? When the elevator chimed, Willow bolted from her chair and ran to the entrance hall. Perrin stood there, white hair disheveled and a spray of something dark across his shirt, but otherwise unharmed. Relief crashed over her so powerfully it nearly brought her to her knees. "You're okay," she breathed. Perrin's severe expression softened when he saw her. "I'm fine. It's over." He opened his arms and she went to him without hesitation, not caring about the blood on his clothes, needing to feel him solid and whole beneath her hands. "Marcus is dead. He won't threaten you again." "What happened?" "Exactly what you feared. It was a trap, an attempt to lure me in so his allies could ambush us. He'd allied with several other malcontents, vampires who disagreed with my rule and saw his vendetta as an opportunity to overthrow me. But we were prepared. My warriors dealt with the ambush while I confronted Marcus personally." "Did he suffer?" The question surprised her with its venom. "Yes." Perrin's voice was cold, final. "He tried to bargain, to claim he'd only meant to scare you, not kill you. But I smelled the lie in his words. He wanted you dead, wanted to hurt me through you, and for that I showed no mercy. His death was neither quick nor painless." Good, Willow thought viciously, and felt no shame for it. Marcus had locked her in that cellar, had left her to drown in the dark, had terrorized her for a week by his continued existence. She hoped his end had been agonizing. "It's truly over?" she asked, needing to hear it again. "Truly. The threat is ended, the conspirators dealt with. You're safe now, Willow, free to return to your life whenever you wish." Perrin pulled back slightly to look at her, his red eyes searching. "Though I confess, I hope you'll stay a while longer. For entirely selfish reasons." "Selfish?" "I've grown accustomed to your presence, to finding you in my library, hearing your heartbeat in the next room, talking with you until dawn. I'm not ready to give that up. Not yet." "Good," Willow said firmly, "because I'm not going anywhere. Not until we've had time to really figure this out, away from the fear and the danger. I want to know you, Perrin. The real you, not just my protector, but the man beneath the crown." Something fierce and possessive flashed through his eyes. "You may not like what you find. I'll take that risk." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and Willow poured everything she felt into the kiss. Relief and desire, and the beginning of something that felt dangerously like love. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Perrin rested his forehead against hers. "I need to clean up," he said ruefully. "This blood is unsightly." "It's Marcus's." "Yes? Then I don't mind it at all." Willow surprised herself with her own bloodthirstiness, but Perrin merely smiled. "Fierce little thing. I like this side of you. You bring it out in me." The days that followed were different from the ones before. The fear was gone, replaced by something warmer and infinitely more complicated. Willow stayed in the penthouse of her own free will, taking only a brief trip to her apartment to collect clothes and notify her advisor that she was taking a temporary leave for family reasons. She'd deal with her thesis eventually. For now, she wanted to focus on this strange new reality she'd stumbled into. Perrin courted her with old-world charm, taking her to restaurants that never appeared on any guide because they catered exclusively to vampires and their guests. He showed her the hidden world that existed beneath the city's surface, the clubs where humans and vampires mingled under strict rules, The galleries that displayed art from centuries past, the libraries that held books no mortal institution would ever see. He introduced her to his court, the dozens of vampires who swore allegiance to him, and they accepted her with wary courtesy that slowly warmed into genuine friendship. Seraphine became a close confidant, teaching Willow the intricacies of vampire politics and etiquette. "You'll need to know these things," she said one afternoon while they shared tea in the garden on the penthouse's terrace. "If you're serious about remaining in His Majesty's life, the court will expect you to understand our ways." "I'm serious," Willow confirmed, "more serious than I've been about anything in my life." "And the turning? Have you discussed it further?" "Some. Perrin wants me to be absolutely certain before we approach the council. He says I should experience more of vampire society, understand what I'd be giving up and what I'd be gaining. He's wise. The change is permanent and not without cost, but if you're willing," Seraphine smiled, "I think you'd make an excellent vampire. You have the strength for it, the determination, and you've already proven you can handle fear and trauma without breaking. Those qualities are essential for surviving the transformation." "How bad is it? The actual turning?" "Agony," Seraphine said bluntly. "The vampire blood destroys your human cells and rebuilds them, and the process takes 3 days during which you'll wish for death. But if you survive, if your body accepts the change, you emerge stronger, faster, with senses beyond anything you've known, and immortality. Of course, the chance to learn and grow and experience things for centuries instead of decades." "And the blood drinking?" "You'll crave it, need it, but it won't define you any more than eating defines humans. It's simply sustenance." Seraphine sipped her tea delicately. "There's a learning curve, of course. New vampires often struggle with bloodlust, with controlling their strength, with adapting to enhanced senses. But Perrin is an excellent sire. He'll guide you through it all if you choose this path." Willow considered that as she stared out at the city beyond the terrace. Becoming a vampire, giving up sunlight and mortality and everything human. It should have terrified her, should have sent her running back to her normal life. Instead, she felt a strange sense of rightness, like this was what she'd been meant for all along. "I want it," she said quietly. "I want him, and I want the life we could have together. I want centuries to learn and explore and be with him. I want it all." "Then you shall have it," Seraphine said warmly. "His Majesty will be pleased. He's been like a different person since you came into his life, lighter somehow, less burdened by the weight of his crown. He carries a lot of responsibility. All kings do, but it's been a long time since I've seen him care for someone the way he cares for you. Not since his sister died, and that was nearly a century ago. You've given him something precious, Miss Prescott. Hope, the possibility of companionship that doesn't end with him watching another loved one age and die. Don't underestimate what that means to someone who's lived as long as he has." That evening, Willow approached Perrin in the library where he sat reviewing reports from his territory. She'd dressed carefully in a deep green dress that Seraphine had selected, wanting to look confident and certain for what she was about to say. "I've made my decision," she announced without preamble. Perrin looked up from his papers, red eyes sharp and focused. "Have you?" "I want to be turned. I want to become a vampire." She moved closer, her voice steady and sure. "I've thought about it carefully, discussed it with Seraphine, considered all the costs and benefits. And I want this. I want the life we could have together. I want centuries instead of decades. I want you, Perrin, fully and completely." He stood slowly, setting aside the papers, his expression unreadable. "This is not a decision to make lightly." "I'm not making it lightly. I'm making it with full knowledge and consent. I understand what I'm giving up. Sunlight, mortality, the chance at a normal human life. But I also understand what I'm gaining. You, power, time, a place in this hidden world that fascinates me more than I can express." She reached out and took his hand. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life. The council will need to approve it. Then ask them. Make your case. Fight for this if you want it too." "If I want it?" Perrin pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her waist. "Willow, I have wanted this since the moment you told me you trusted me. I've imagined a future with you by my side for days, weeks, always pushing the thoughts away because I feared you'd never choose this life. But if you're truly willing, I am." Then I will petition the council immediately. I will argue that you are strong, intelligent, and worthy of the gift of immortality. I will swear to take responsibility for your transformation and training, to guide you through the difficulties of your first years. And I will make it clear that my queen has chosen this path of her own free will. Willow's breath caught. Your queen? Did you think I wanted you merely as a companion, a lover? Perrin cupped her face with both hands, his red eyes burning with intensity. I want you as my partner, Willow, my equal, the one who stands beside me to rule this territory and all who dwell within it. I want to spend centuries with you, learning everything there is to know about you, watching you grow into your power, facing whatever challenges come our way together. So yes, my queen, if you'll have me. Yes, Willow whispered, tears springing to her eyes. God, yes, of course, yes. He kissed her then, pouring centuries of loneliness and hope into the connection. Willow kissed him back with equal fervor, feeling the rightness of this choice settling into her bones. This was her future, her fate, and she was claiming it with both hands. The council meeting was held 3 nights later in a chamber deep beneath the city, accessed through tunnels that Perrin explained had been carved out centuries ago when vampires first established their presence in this territory. Willow walked beside him, wearing formal attire that Seraphine had helped her select, feeling nervous but determined. They'll test you, Perrin warned as they descended. Question your resolve, try to frighten you with details of the transformation. Stand firm. Show them the strength I know you possess. The council chamber was circular and grand, lit by candles that cast flickering shadows on stone walls. 12 vampires sat in high-backed chairs arranged in a semicircle, all of them ancient and powerful if their pure white hair and regal bearing were any indication. They turned as one when Perrin and Willow entered, their collective gaze weighing and assessing. Your Majesty, one of them said, a female vampire with silver robes and eyes like garnets. You've called this emergency session to petition for a turning. Please present your case. Perrin stepped forward, his presence commanding even among these elders. Council members, I bring before you Willow Prescott, a human of sound mind and strong character who seeks admittance into our ranks. She has proven herself brave, intelligent, and resilient. She understands the costs of transformation and accepts them willingly. I personally vouch for her worthiness, and I offer myself as her sire, should you grant approval. And what is her reason for seeking immortality? Another council member asked, an older male with a severe expression. Love is not sufficient justification on its own. Willow stepped forward before Perrin could answer. With respect, council member, love is part of it, but not all. I seek immortality because I want to learn, to grow, to experience things no human lifespan could encompass. I've spent weeks in your world now, learning your culture and history, and I find myself drawn to it in ways I can't fully articulate. I want to be part of this society, to contribute to it, to help bridge the gap between your kind and mine. And yes, I love your king, and I want centuries with him instead of decades, but I also want this for myself, for the person I could become with time and power and purpose. The council members exchanged glances. The female who had spoken first leaned forward. You understand that the transformation is agonizing, that many do not survive it? I understand. And you accept that you will never walk freely in daylight again, that you will need blood to survive, that you will watch any human friends you keep age and die while you remain frozen at your current age? I accept all of it. Why should we believe this isn't merely infatuation, that you won't regret your choice once the initial passion fades? Because I've never been the type to make impulsive decisions, Willow said firmly. I research thoroughly before committing to anything. I've spent 2 weeks learning everything I can about your world, asking questions, testing my own reactions. I've discussed the transformation with Seraphine in detail, heard about the pain and the difficulties, and I still want this. That's not infatuation, that's informed choice. The council deliberated in low voices for several long minutes while Willow stood with her heart pounding and her hands clenched at her sides. Perrin remained beside her, a silent pillar of support, his presence giving her strength. Finally, the female council member spoke. The council has reached a decision. We grant approval for the turning, on the condition that His Majesty takes full responsibility for the candidate's transformation and training. Should she fail to adapt, should she prove dangerous or unstable, it will fall to him to correct the situation." "I accept those terms," Perrin said immediately. "Then it is decided. Willow Prescott, 3 nights from now, you will undergo the transformation. May you survive it with your mind intact." The formal dismissal was clear, and Perrin guided Willow from the chamber with a hand at the small of her back. As soon as they were alone in the tunnels, she let out a shaky breath. "I can't believe they approved it." "I never doubted they would. You were magnificent in there, strong and articulate. They saw what I see, someone worthy of immortality." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. 3 nights, love. Are you ready?" "I'm terrified," she admitted against his chest, but also excited. "Is that strange?" "Not at all. Fear and anticipation often go hand in hand when facing something monumental." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "I'll be with you through every moment of it. When the pain becomes unbearable, when you think you can't survive another second, I'll be there. You won't face this alone. Promise?" "On my immortal life." The 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Seraphine explained what would happen in clinical detail: the exchange of blood, the death of Willow's human body, the agonizing 3-day transformation, as vampire blood rebuilt her from the inside out. Perrin ensured the penthouse was prepared, setting up a secure room where Willow could transform without endangering herself or others should she become violent during the process. "New vampires often lose control," he explained. "The pain and confusion can make them dangerous. I'll restrain you if necessary, but I'll do everything in my power to help you through it with minimal trauma." On the final day, Willow called her advisor and officially withdrew from her graduate program. She closed her bank accounts and left instructions for her apartment to be cleared out. She said goodbye to her old life with surprising ease, feeling like she was shedding a skin that no longer fit. That evening, she dressed in simple clothes and met Perrin in the prepared room. It was sparse, with only a bed, some restraints bolted to the walls, and medical supplies. Perrin looked grim but determined as he guided her to sit on the bed. "Last chance to change your mind," he said quietly. "Not a chance. Do it." He nodded once, then used a knife to open a vein in his wrist. Blood welled up, dark and viscous, and he offered it to her. "Drink as much as you can." Willow took his wrist and pressed her mouth to the wound, fighting her natural revulsion. The blood was thick and oddly spicy, coating her throat as she swallowed. She drank until Perrin gently pulled away, the wound already healing with supernatural speed. "Now you," he said, taking the knife. She offered her wrist, and he made a quick, precise cut. The pain was sharp but bearable, and she watched as he lowered his mouth to the wound and drank. The sensation was strange, intimate, like she could feel him drawing life from her veins. When he finally stopped and sealed the wound with his saliva, she felt dizzy and weak. "Lie down," Perrin instructed, helping her recline on the bed. "The transformation will begin soon. Remember that I'm here. No matter how bad it gets, I'm here." Willow wanted to respond, but suddenly her body convulsed with pain so intense she couldn't breathe. It felt like every cell was burning, being torn apart and reconstructed. She tried to scream, but no sound came out, her throat locked with agony. Perrin's cool hands stroked her face, his voice murmuring comfort she couldn't process through the torment. Time lost meaning. There was only pain, endless and all-consuming, and the occasional awareness of Perrin's presence beside her. True to his word, he never left. When she thrashed and tried to claw at her own skin, he restrained her gently. When she finally found her voice and screamed until her throat was raw, he held her and whispered promises that it would end. When she begged for death, he told her she was strong enough to survive. 3 days and 3 nights of hell. But slowly, gradually, the pain began to ebb. Sensation returned to her extremities. She became aware of sounds she'd never heard before: the building settling, traffic 20 stories below, conversations in distant apartments. Scents flooded her nose, complex and overwhelming. And when she finally opened her eyes, the world looked different, sharper, more vivid. She could see individual dust motes floating in the air, could count the threads in the fabric of Perrin's shirt. "Welcome back," Perrin said softly, his face swimming into focus above her. "You did it, love. You survived." Willow tried to speak, but her throat was desert dry. Perrin helped her sit up, supporting her weight as her new body adjusted to movement. Everything felt wrong and right at once, too strong, too sensitive, too much. "Easy," he murmured. "It takes time to adjust. You're a newborn now, learning to use senses you've never had before. We'll take it slow." "Blood," she managed to croak. I know." He produced a crystal glass filled with red liquid and held it to her lips. "Slowly. Sip. Don't gulp." The blood hit her tongue, and Willow's entire being sang with need. It was the most delicious thing she'd ever tasted, satisfying a craving she hadn't known she had. She drank greedily, feeling strength flood back into her limbs, and when the glass was empty, she finally felt capable of coherent thought. "I'm alive," she said wonderingly. "You're immortal," Perrin corrected, smiling. "And beautiful. Look." He helped her to a mirror mounted on the wall, and Willow stared at her reflection in shock. Her skin had paled to vampire white, luminous and perfect. Her hair seemed darker by contrast, and when she smiled tentatively, she caught the glint of new fangs. But most startling were her eyes, no longer brown but a brilliant red, like rubies catching light. "I'm one of you," she whispered. "You're one of us," Perrin agreed, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "My queen, my love, my eternal companion." Willow leaned back against him, marveling at how different everything felt. She could hear his breath, slow and steady, could smell the blood he'd recently consumed, could feel the power thrumming through her own veins, dangerous and intoxicating. "What happens now? Now you learn how to feed without killing, how to control your strength, how to navigate society as a vampire, how to rule by my side." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "But first, you rest. The transformation takes a tremendous toll. Come, let's get you somewhere comfortable." The weeks that followed were challenging but exhilarating. Perrin taught her to hunt, to identify willing donors, to take only what she needed without causing harm. He trained her to fight, to use her new speed and strength effectively. He introduced her to the intricacies of vampire politics, teaching her to read the complex social dynamics of his court. And through it all, their bond deepened into something unshakable. Willow proved to be a natural. Her academic mind adapted quickly to vampire lore and law, and she threw herself into learning with the same passion she'd once brought to her graduate studies. The court accepted her gradually, recognizing her intelligence and her genuine desire to contribute. Seraphine became not just a friend, but a trusted advisor, helping Willow navigate the sometimes treacherous waters of vampire society. 6 months after her transformation, Perrin held a formal ceremony to announce Willow as his queen. The entire court gathered in a grand hall beneath the city, hundreds of vampires in formal attire, and Willow stood beside Perrin's throne, wearing a gown of deep crimson that Seraphine had commissioned specially for the occasion. "This woman," Perrin announced to the assembled crowd, his voice carrying through the chamber, "has proven herself worthy in every way. She survived the transformation with her mind intact. She has learned our laws and customs with dedication and grace. She has earned my respect, my admiration, and my eternal love. I name her Willow Obsidia, queen of this territory, and I charge you all to show her the same loyalty and obedience you show me." The court erupted in applause, and Willow felt blood tears now, red as wine, prick her eyes. Perrin took her hand and drew her forward, and together they faced their people, united and powerful. Later, in the privacy of their chambers, Perrin pulled her into his arms and kissed her with all the passion and love they'd built over these months. "Thank you," he murmured against her lips. "For what?" "For choosing this. For choosing me. For giving me hope when I thought I'd spend eternity alone." His red eyes were soft as he gazed at her. "I love you, Willow, more than I thought myself capable of loving anything after so many years of solitude." "I love you too," she replied, cradling his face in her hands, "and I would choose you again every single time. This life, this world, it's everything I never knew I wanted. Thank you for saving me, for protecting me, for making me your equal instead of keeping me as some fragile thing to be guarded." "You were never fragile. From the moment I pulled you from that water, I knew you were extraordinary." He swept her up in his arms, carrying her toward their bed with a smile that was both playful and heated. "And now we have eternity to explore just how extraordinary you can become." Willow laughed, the sound bright and joyful. as Perrin laid her on silk sheets and proceeded to show her exactly what forever with a vampire king could mean. Outside their chambers, the city continued its endless rhythm, humans and vampires coexisting in careful balance. But in this moment, there was only the two of them, bound by choice and blood and love that would last through the centuries. The water had risen to her chin in that locked cellar, and the vampire king had torn the door from its hinges. He had saved her life, and in doing so, had given her a new one entirely, a life of power and purpose, of love and belonging, of endless nights filled with discovery and passion. It was not the future Willow had imagined for herself when she'd set out to photograph an abandoned estate, but it was so much better than anything she could have dreamed. Years passed, decades. Willow grew into her role as queen with confidence and skill, beloved by the court for her fairness and intelligence. She and Perrin ruled together, partners in every sense, facing challenges and threats as they arose with united strength. They traveled the world, visiting other territories, forging alliances and friendships. They weathered political upheavals and the slow march of human progress that occasionally threatened to expose their kind. Through it all, their love remained constant. They learned each other completely, inside and out, and found that eternity was not too long when spent with the right person. Willow never regretted her choice, never looked back with longing at the human life she'd left behind. This was where she belonged, in the shadows and the night by Perrin's side, living a life that was anything but ordinary. On the 100th anniversary of her transformation, Perrin took her back to the place where it had all begun. The Thornfield estate had been demolished decades ago, replaced by a modern building, but they stood on the ground where the cellar had once been and remembered. "Do you ever think about that night?" Willow asked, leaning against her husband's shoulder. "Every day," Perrin admitted. "I think about how close I came to losing you before we'd even met, how if I'd been even minutes later, you would have drowned and I never would have known what we could become together. It haunts me still." "Don't let it. I'm here. We're here. Together for eternity." She turned to face him, her red eyes meeting his. "That's what matters." "You're right, as always." He smiled, that rare, genuine smile he reserved only for her. "Come, let's go home." Home, not to the penthouse where she'd first stayed, though they kept that as one of several residences. Home to the sprawling estate they'd built together on the outskirts of the city, a place of beauty and security where they could simply be Perrin and Willow rather than king and queen, where they could watch the stars from the terrace and talk until dawn as they had in those first tentative days of their relationship. They walked hand in hand through the modern streets, two pale figures among the human crowd, invisible and eternal. And Willow thought, not for the first time, how lucky she was, that she had gone to that estate, that someone had tried to kill her, that a vampire king had heard her fear and come running, that everything had aligned perfectly to bring her to this moment, this life, this love. The water had risen to her chin in the locked cellar. The vampire king had torn the door from its hinges, and in doing so, he had opened the door to forever. That was how their story began, and it would never truly end, because immortal love stories have no conclusion. They simply continue, night after night, century after century, two souls bound together against the darkness, Perrin and Willow, king and queen, vampire and vampire, facing eternity together with love as their constant companion and guide. And they lived, truly lived, forever after.